the mental health of teachers, we need it. And it can be simple as taking a breath, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be adding more to your plate or buying a bunch of things or changing your entire curriculum, but the power of the breath. And then
Yeah.
I was able to be calm and go down up to students one at a time and sort of connect with them. How are you doing? Some kids were crying. Some kids wanted to walk around. And then I was able to work with them individually. But if not, if I hadn't have looked after my own nervous system, there's no way I could have been available to teach.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, isn't it? As teachers, we need to be self-regulated so that we can co-regulate and be the calm for the kids in our classroom. Welcome to Rainbow Skies for New Teachers, where we're all about bite-sized tips and simple strategies for bright and busy new teachers.
If you're in your first few years of your career and want to make the rollercoaster ride of teaching more fun, streamlined and stress-free, you're in the right place.
We're Ashleigh and Alisha, the dynamic duo from Rainbow Sky Creations, and we're excited to be your teacher mentors on the go. There are rainbows ahead, my friend.
And together, we're unstoppable. Let's get into today's episode.
Rainbow Sky Creations acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Dharawal and Whadjuk Noongar people. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures. Hello, beautiful listener. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. I have the pleasure of sharing with you my chat I had recently with Giselle from Kids Yoga Stories. She's a classroom teacher and trained yoga instructor who's travelled and taught all over the world. And in 2012, she decided to blend her passions of yoga, mindfulness and education to create books, card decks, courses and educational resources to bring the benefits of yoga to children everywhere. Now, when we sat down for our chat, I knew I had a misconception of what yoga is all about. And she enlightened me on how we can integrate and make yoga practices a daily habit in the classroom. I feel in today's world, at the pace that we're operating, that so many students and teachers are going to benefit by the simple suggestions she provides for how to incorporate yoga and the ancient wisdom, as she says, into the classroom. So I hope you enjoyed the chat I had today with Giselle as much as I did. Hello, Giselle from Kids Yoga Stories. It is so delightful to have you on the podcast today.
Oh, it's so great. We were chatting before. We have so much in common. I'm thrilled to be here chatting with you, Alisha.
Yes, fun fact for our listeners that Giselle, even though she's a Canadian living in America, she has an Australian husband. So she gets the Australianism. So it's refreshing. And you've spent time over here teaching.
Yes.
So you definitely are aware of the quirkiness of us Australians.
Yes, absolutely.
Look, let's tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your passion and your missions behind Kids Yoga Stories.
Yeah. So what you alluded to there, what I was doing in Sydney was work as a teacher. So I think of my life sort of in parallel, had synchronicity to it. So on one hand, I've always worked with children. I grew up as a figure skater. I taught skating and then I went to day camps and then became a teacher. So that was always a thread for me. And at the same time, I've always practiced yoga in some shape or form. So it started in the middle of Canada. We grew up on a farm. My British mom used to put on the television and we were in the middle of nowhere and she used to practice yoga. And we did that with her. So that was the first sort of taste. And then through my 20s, whenever I came home, I was traveling, living in Guatemala, teaching and all over the place. So I'd come home and we'd go to yoga classes together. And then when I got to Sydney, I tried out a few yoga studios, found my home, so to speak, my yoga home, and took yoga teacher training. That was almost 20 years ago. So I always had these threads together. So teaching with children and yoga. And after the teacher training, I would have these moments, Alisha, like late at night, thinking about, oh my gosh, if I had only had these yoga principles, this ancient wisdom with me in my toolkit as a teacher, wow. So that's when I sort of brought those passions together. Initially, it showed up as yoga stories because I'm super obsessed as an elementary school teacher with picture books. So that's where it started. And I kind of feel like there was a few downloads of stories that kind of just came through me. And then when my daughter was little, she was 9 months old. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to publish a couple of these stories, right? There's no good sitting on a computer. So I published in a couple of stories. And then now we are 12 years later, boom, it's been a joy, absolutely
Wow.
creating kids yoga stories. Yeah.
And I don't think having picture books is too bad a confession to have as
Right.
I collect way too many of those.
Oh my gosh, right?
And I think that's the thing, the power of storytelling. We communicate
Yeah.
through storytelling. It's been used for hundreds and thousands of years. When you teach through storytelling, I think statistically, it's something like a 60% higher chance of it retaining in your brain through storytelling. So I
Yeah.
love it.
I think that is the key, Alicia, is that through this work for the last 12 years is figuring out how to help teachers or parents, caregivers, or whoever. How do we help them use this ancient wisdom to help children self-regulate, manage their big emotions, and really be ready to learn? So it's really that piece of, okay, how do I take my obsession and how do we make good of the work that we're doing?
Yeah, because oh my gosh, we need it in this busy
Right.
paced world. I feel
Mm.
like I need to confess that I'm a Pilates lover and I have over my
Yes.
years tried to embed yoga into the classroom and anything that is
Mm.
new. What I love about the kids' yoga story is if it's presented in a story, it's just kind of easier for everyone. And just like when you're teaching about big things like
Yeah.
kindness and growth mindset, if you present it in a story, you go, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought. Not as if I think yoga is bad. I actually probably now moving into that space of being more conscious of that breathing, mindfulness, and ancient wisdom, as you say. So
Yes.
you're a classroom teacher, life's a bit hectic, you're smashing through the curriculum. How can yoga practice benefit primary school students or even secondary students, any student, a human, both
Mm.
academically and emotionally?
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll send you a link to some research because I think that's super important for people to have, especially as teachers, because everything we do has to have a reason. We have a duty of care to our stakeholders, as such, the parents and the administration, that we need to have, there has to be scientific research behind it. So I'll send you that link so you can look at the list of studies. But really, what it's saying is it's affecting stress and anxiety, it's affecting social emotional, it's affecting focus and attention in the classroom, self-esteem and confidence, emotional regulation and executive functioning, all these pieces that could be kind of throwaway. But what you're asking there is really about for us to stop and think, why? What is it we're trying to target? And we go in a lot more depth in our school yoga program where people create their own customized programs, but they look at what is it I want to target? So, for example, it may be even simple in preschool. You think, you know what? I actually want to work with the children just to move, like flexibility and core work and strength, because there's a lot more sitting down than we used to. So, you might actually try the postures and movement that way or chair yoga. Whereas maybe your upper middle school, you think, oh my goodness, they really need a way to come to this present moment. They've got these schedules, they're overworked, there's too much stress and anxiety. So you might bring in some mindfulness activities. So you see that depending on what the research is and what you're targeting will then inform what practices you're introducing. Because again, yoga is a reminder that yoga is not just the physical postures that we see on, magazine covers or whatever, but also it's meditations and mindfulness and karma yoga, which is the service of community, of helping others, positive affirmations. And for me, quite simply, what I've seen the most impact is breathing exercises. So there's a lot to choose from.
That's amazing. And yeah, we do probably put yoga into the box of it's just doing poses, but there's so many
Yeah.
facets to it. So, kind of what you're saying is that one, we're going to link the research that you provided in our show notes, but it's kind of looking at what does your class need? Is it an element of mindfulness? Is it a component of those poses for their gross motor skills and full
Yeah.
body work? Is it breath work? I'm going to say every class needs breath work.
And the teachers too.
Yeah, every workplace needs breath work. Walk
Honestly.
into a hospital, you need breath work. There's so much power
Yeah.
behind it, and the research is showing that we should be doing it for the benefit of our mind, body, and soul. So I think now when you talk about it, the positive affirmations and the karma side of yoga, there's a part I'm not familiar with at all, but kind of makes sense. But
Right.
there's probably teachers out there who are like, yeah, I'm doing positive affirmations. And you'd probably think
Right.
back of like, why are you
Yeah.
doing them? How is your class benefiting from them? Because there's a reason you keep doing it. So,
Yes. Well, like
yeah.
that's exactly right, Alicia. I think that's the most important thing is that when teachers come to our website or our communities and say, oh, actually, I have been doing some of these things. I just didn't bring the intention to it. And that's where the magic is. If you're choosing activities specifically for a certain outcome, it kind of gives this extra magic, right? A little sprinkle on top. That's what we found is just bringing the intentionality to the work.
I love that. The intention, your why. Comes back to that why, doesn't it? So say I want to start bringing this into my classroom a bit more. You can choose which facet you want to choose on of the yoga stream to share with our listeners. But how could you integrate this into the classroom for the students? Like what's one component, whether it's mindfulness, breathing or yoga, what would be like your first spot to start with?
Yeah. So again, so thinking about depends on what age, right? What your population is. You think about that big picture. What are the age group? How much space you've got? How much time you've got? What is sort of the target? What are you looking at? What are the challenges? What are the additional needs of the students? So you're looking at all of those pieces. And again, we can certainly go through that with folks, but easy ones, breath of the month. So we've got these really handy dandy breathing exercise cards for kids. We don't have them in physical in Australia right now, but we do have them here in the United States, but they're on digital as well. So you would just have those up on your whiteboards and you could say, okay, this is our breath of the month. Or I pull out sometimes 2 cards and say this or that. You can choose this breath or that breath. So that is just having an easy breath that they're learning. And you can do that within your classroom, within the grade, or within the school. So that's magic. So just learning and practicing the different breaths. Another one could be I'm going to practice chair poses during transitions. So the thing about an elementary specifically, our schedule, or even with a middle school, say you're going from class to class, but it's that transition time. So I use it for our morning schedule. We have, from 9 o'clock, say to 11 is lunch. That's a big chunk. And you're often doing 2 different subjects. So what I do is in between that transition, we just do a few chair poses. I don't even make a big deal about it. I don't even say this is what it is. We have some chair yoga pose cards as well, in digital and physical. And I just share those as well. It projects onto the white screen and I just have the 3 of them there, for example. And then we just do it. We say, let's take a twist one way or let's stretch up this way. Unbelievable, the difference. Just taking it's a little brain break. It's a movement. It's not a big deal, but it completely resets the way that they're able to be then ready to learn, right? And also
Yes.
that get the children involved and have them choose the poses or whatever. So that would be the second one. So you could do like a breath of the month, chair yoga poses. And the third one would be a lot of our community, they just do morning announcements. So you could do it either for the whole school in the morning, or what I used to do is I do in the morning meeting. I don't know if in Australia you do the morning meeting, but here it's very popular for us to do the morning meeting. And there's tons of ideas. You can do like a mindfulness practice, for example. So you go through your schedule, you're already doing what you're doing, and then you just add a little piece to get them focused so they can, again, be ready to learn. When you finish your morning meeting, go back to their seats. But it could be something like, I spy, or let's look for different colors. So I'll say, does anyone see something red in the classroom? And then orange. And so you do it like the rainbow, for example, or we do a sound count. So again, in our Mindful Kids different resources, we've got tons of ideas that are just at the ready. You can be choosing how do we bring a little bit of mindfulness in just to bring them focus so we can carry on with the day.
Yes, I love this because there's a bit of me that goes, oh, yeah, this is probably where I was going wrong. Is I was kind of like in my head going, I need to schedule this specific part of mindfulness into the schedule when actually it's just integrated, right? You're just
Yes.
becoming the everyday part. You're
Yeah.
noticing the kids getting a bit restless, they're wriggling. You bring in some chair poses. You're starting the morning with intention, with breathing, or with your mindfulness activity. So it's kind of like it becomes part of your teaching practice.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I love it. It comes out too when we're practicing this during the regular school day. We start day 1, right? So it just becomes part of your schedule. But what you're doing there is creating little bits of social emotional pieces, right? You're building the building blocks, you're planting seeds. So let me give you an example. This woman in our community, Amy, she's a school counselor, and she started to create morning announcements. So every Monday, she got on the announcements and she was teaching the children different breathing and mindfulness activities. She had a Google Slides to share with the teachers. They had a link so they could reinforce it during the week. So then after a couple months, they were out in the playground and one of the little friends fell off the playground. Then ambulance came, took the little friend off. So you imagine you've got now 50 children in elementary school, and I think it was like K-3 or K-4. So the principal said to Amy, off you go help out these children. So she went up, group of 50 teachers and children. It was chaos, Alisha. total
I can
chaos. The way she
imagine.
describes it is super powerful. So they're screaming, they're scared, they've just seen their little friend go off in an ambulance, they don't know what's going on, totally hectic. So what does she do in that moment? It wasn't like it was planned. It was just so innate in the way that she taught. She just said, "Okay, everyone up." And she did the figure eight. She just took her finger and started to do the eight. And because the children had been learning this through the mindful morning announcements, because she herself had naturally taught breathing exercises throughout the days, it just became natural for her. So then she says, "Here I am doing a figure eight." All the children and the staff stop and start doing the figure eight and start breathing. Are you kidding me with that?
Oh,
So powerful. And within a couple minutes, there they were. Everyone was calm and ready. That's like a miracle moment. That's like when you're a surfer, you're going to wait for that 100th wave. You're not going to
yeah.
have that every day. I'm not going to say, oh, that practicing breathing exercises is going to transform your entire life always, but
Yes.
you have those moments. And she said she had been teaching as a school counselor for 15 years. And in that moment, she knew in her heart that this is the work she was meant to be doing.
Oh, I've got goosebumps. This is so powerful.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that's the thing when you're incorporating the principles behind yoga is it
Yeah.
brings you back to the present moment. The physiological effects on your body are profound in itself and you can feel it. You can't be thinking about that scenario that's happened if you're just focusing on breathing in and out because your brain is going, that's all I can focus on right now. So,
Right.
wow, just stories like that
Yeah.
remind us this is something that everyone can benefit from.
Mm.
And right away you can just feel your your like
Yeah.
cortisol levels dropping, the flight and
Right.
fight response dissipating.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
love this.
Let me tell you another story too, how that relates to being a teacher, because I think this is key. So
Yes.
when Amy told me the story, like a few months after that, I was subbing in a class in a school that had fourth and fifth grade. And so I was in an assembly. All the children had just come. We're all sitting down, and there was another student there with us who had been in my classroom as well. She stumbled and fell over and passed out. And so the all the students were just like they were trying to clap. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't really understand. And when she didn't move, then there was this shift of energy. Oh my gosh, right? What happened? So the principal said, everyone back to their classrooms. But I could feel it triggered for me. My dad had passed out last year. A few of us were triggered. So we went up to the classroom and I remembered what Amy's story. And I went to the front of the room and I just drew an eight on the front, the whiteboard. And so I said to students, I just need a moment to regroup after that. And I modeled the eight because with that age group, right, the fifth graders, it's different, right? And so they want to be part of it. And so the students just followed me and they just started doing it with me. I'd never done it with them before, but because I was modeling that I needed it for myself, and this is the key as teachers, we need it just as much as they do. For me, I don't think this is something that's an extra. This is like a no kidding, the mental health of teachers. We need it. And it can be simple as taking a breath, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be adding more to your plate or buying a bunch of things or changing your entire curriculum, but the power of the breath. And then
Yeah.
I was able to be calm and go down up to students one at a time and sort of connect with them. How are you doing? Some kids were crying, some kids wanted to walk around. And then I was able to work with them individually. But if not, if I hadn't have looked after my own nervous system, there's no way I could have been available to teach.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, isn't it? As teachers, we need to be self regulated so that we can co
Yeah.
regulate and be the calm for the kids in our classroom. And I think you
Right.
kind of touched on that whole probably little mindset block for teachers is like, what if we've got that half the kids who just don't want to do it? And I think along those lines of they're going to see the benefit it has on you. They're going to start to participate in it. It might be not in term one that much. It might be not in term two. They might just sit there. If anything, it's giving them a time to pause and reflect and not have to do work. But I probably would guarantee by the end of the year, you've got 99.9% of your kids participating in the
Right.
activities because you've made it your daily practice, your daily
Yes.
zen. You've brought it
Yeah.
into the classroom. They probably don't even know that what you're doing is ancient wisdom. This has made me feel calmer. And I think now we're entering a phase, thank goodness, where we're talking about our emotions. We're identifying if I'm getting angry, how does that feel in my body? If I'm happy, how does that feel in my body? Ecstatic. And kids of today, I think we need to give them the benefit of the doubt. If we're coming in as millennials and Gen Zs who have a preconceived idea on this sort of stuff of being a bit woo-woo, it's because
Yeah.
of what we've been taught. We're entering a generation of kids who are like, this is their normal. They're probably
Yeah.
used to their teachers
Right.
going, I can sense in your body here that you're not happy or that you're really upset. And they're like, oh yeah, they're more
Yeah.
attuned to it. So I think we need to
Right.
be a little bit braver, because you got to be a little bit scared to be a little bit brave, and try. If you're listening to this and you've been sitting on the fence, I'm pretty sure Giselle has convinced you that this is a no-brainer. You need to be doing this for
Yeah.
you and for the kids in your classroom. Oh, I need
Yeah.
to be
And
doing
I
this
think
at home with my kids.
right. Oh my gosh, right? You are in it with your little ones. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think too is about starting with what you're interested in. Follow your own passion. So if you're particularly interested in mindfulness, meditations, like the breathing, whatever it is that you're interested in, because the children, they know, they will sense your enthusiasm. And so when I'm saying up there making an 8, I'm not checking to see that they are engaged or not. I couldn't care less. In that moment, I thought my job right now is to get regulated. That's it. And the children who are going to watch and participate, awesome. The other ones probably are curious. They may not be participating, but it's planted a seed like, oh, what is she doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So say we've got some of these teachers who are really sitting on the fence. Do you have some top tips for them integrating yoga and yoga practices into the classroom?
Yeah, so I coined this 5 C's, and I actually created it for myself when, as a young parent with a young child who was extremely difficult, I've got a wrecker of a kid.
What do they call
So,
it? A spicy one.
oh, she's a spicy one. Yeah, truly Australian. She's spicy. So after spending all this time reading everything I could read, Alicia, because you can't help but be a teacher even when you become a parent. So the first step is like look for strategies or formulas or whatever. I tried everything. And I thought, okay, stop everything and just listen to my own intuition. And on the yoga, when I started meditating again, I thought to myself, okay, what's the most important thing here? Calm. The first C is calm. So as a teacher, is getting yourself exactly what you talked about is being regulated, whatever that may be for you. Find your own breath, find your own in tune, find your own voice. What makes you unique as a teacher? So start with being calm and organized. The second one is about being curious. So we talked about researching the benefits or find out more about the students, see what they might be interested. Think about the curriculum. How can we add this ancient wisdom into the curriculum that we're already doing? So getting just curious about what are the students, what are their needs? The third C is about connecting. How do we connect with children on a deeper level using this wisdom? So how do we connect with the breath? How do we add this? How do we get them involved and say, I'm thinking about doing this thing, whatever, breath of the month. Would you be interested in helping me lead it? Just connecting with them, asking them questions, seeing what they're interested in, using the themes that they're maybe interested in. And the fourth one is being creative. So again, how do we make this work, all this ancient wisdom, fun for them? How do we make it engaging? Because a lot of the questions we hear is how do we get the children engaged and focused? Well, goodness, what can't you do? Like there's a whole list of things. You go back to the basics of, okay, here's the topics they were interested in. How can I incorporate this kind of music that they're interested in, this song they've been singing all week into what we're already learning in the classroom? And how does that relate to mindfulness or yoga or whatever like that? So how do we be creative in the way that we're presenting the material, right? How do we make it fun? Breathing techniques could be, instead of just teaching extended exhale, it could be blowing through a straw. Or maybe we're going to buzz like bees for spring, or maybe we're going to pretend to blow hot chocolate in the winter. Make it fun and interesting, being creative. And the last one is commit. So just commit to one idea. We've talked before about keeping it simple. It doesn't need to be a big deal. That same idea we've talked about before is that focus on one thing at a time. Just choose one thing. That story I mentioned with Amy, she just said, the first year, I'm going to do mindful Monday announcements. That's all I'm going to do. And then the next year, she thought, okay, I've got the whole year planned. I got that down pat. Now I'm going to create little lunchtime yoga club. I'll do that for a year. And so you just build on it time and time again. Start with what you feel comfortable with and just commit to doing it every single day, just a tiny bit. So that's it. The 5 C's: calm, curious, connect, creative, and commit.
I love it. That sums it up so beautifully. It could be like your 5 principles.
Yeah.
of looking at your teaching in general. Now,
Yeah.
With your kids' yoga story, if you've got a teacher who loves storytelling and they want
Oh,
to
yeah.
incorporate that with yoga, what would you recommend a starting off point with that?
Well, I did say I was obsessed with picture books, so this is definitely my wheelhouse. You can certainly look online. When I first started writing these stories back in 2005, I went to a library in Sydney and there weren't a lot of books on yoga for children, but now there certainly are. So we've got 22 yoga stories, but there's lots of folks now are publishing all the time. Some great names, great illustrators that are traditionally published all the way through to independently published. And I know some of my colleagues in Australia are also publishing as well. So you certainly could go with somebody else that has a yoga story, or you can adapt. So if you're in preschool, for example, like Brown Bear, who doesn't love that little picture book? Or it could be stories that are not necessarily to act out, but they could be based on what you mentioned before, kindness or gratitude. So it depends on what you're looking for. But I think the main idea here when you're thinking about your yoga story time is they're doing something they already know. You already create a structure around story time. They already know what the expectations are. They know how to sit, hopefully, and be with you and modeling that. There's a connection piece. That's really important. Is it something that they already know? So you're building on that, right? And by adding movement, if you're choosing a yoga pose story, so that means for us, we go on different adventures. So we've got one Luke's Beach Day. It was my experience there on Bondi Beach, for example,
Nice.
when we have the ABCs of Australian animals and so that kind of thing. But we go to the jungle, we go to the forest, we go camping, we go to all these different places. We add the poses through the story. So you take them on an adventure, which is super fun. And you can even make up your own stories or share a yoga pose story with your students and they could make up their own versions thereof, which would be so cool. And then recently we've had a school counselor turn our books into yoga plays, which is even more mind blowing. So sixth graders are then performing for little ones. Amazing. So the idea here is adding movement to make it really meaningful and relevant to the children. And then also you want to be thinking about how does it link to the curriculum. So when I taught even kindergarten, starting to think about, okay, so what are they interested in? Pets. I used to do a thing where, okay, they're interested in pets. How do I write a yoga story that's going to link all the different pets so we can add a story and movement? And what you said at the beginning is it increases memory retention. So they're going to remember the experiences. They're going to embody it. They're playing around with the movements. It's not like an adult class where you have to worry about perfectly aligned postures, but it's just about having fun with movement. So who doesn't want to do that is what I'm saying. How
Yes.
was
And
that not a good idea?
I know. And it's just so simple. You embed it into something
Right.
they're so familiar with. That makes sense. And I love when you shared how the year sixes are teaching it to the little kids, because no matter what, the status that the big kids have in the school is much more higher than usually the teachers, even with little kids. Little
Yes.
kids, they idolize their teachers and their status there. But if it's the big kids and they're doing this, oh my gosh, I could just imagine the awe in their faces and the want
100%.
to participate would be the highest you've probably ever seen.
Yeah. Right.
And
Yeah,
then
this is it.
it
Yeah.
does. And it kind of sets that
Yeah.
precedent of this is just what we
Yeah.
do. I'm probably guessing if you're thinking and doing a body check, a little body scan, you're feeling pretty good about that too.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly right. Yeah.
oh,
Love
I
it.
need to go get some of
Yeah.
these books myself. Giselle, it's just been so refreshing to have a chat with you about just yoga and the intricacies of yoga. I feel like I need to go educate myself a bit more, and I will definitely be having a read of that research you've kindly shared with our listeners just to understand more about the benefits of it on our bodies and the physiology element of it, which is so refreshing. Now,
Yeah.
how can our beautiful listeners learn more about kids' yoga stories?
Thank you for asking. So we're at kidsyogastories.com. We're on social, on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook at Kids Yoga Stories. And you can email us at Giselle at kidsyogastories.com. We've got a number of online digital products you can check out. We've got a school yoga program where you create your own customized yoga program, which is amazing. We've got these card decks, chairs, and partner cards and breathing. So certainly lots of materials. And if you're not sure where to start, just email us and we're happy to point you. Just like you, we've got a blog that we've been doing for 12 years. So there's tons of content. Join our newsletter as well. Dip your toe in. There's a lot.
It's exactly the word I was thinking was if you want to dip your
Yeah.
toe in this world of yoga and make it your part of your everyday, go
Yeah.
check out Kids Yoga Stories. because I'm going to be checking it out, my friends.
Awesome. Love it.
Thanks so much for being here, Giselle. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Alisha. It's been so fun.
I really enjoyed having Giselle on the podcast today. I loved how she shared that with yoga, it's just something you can incorporate really effortlessly into the classroom. You could make it as structured as you want or as carefree as you want by just putting bite-sized movement breaks or breath work into your lessons. And I think those 5 C's she shared of calm, curious, connect, creative, and commit are just really a great framework to follow in your teaching career. I feel like even just as being a human, it's really beneficial to break it down into that nice little framework of those 5 C's. So if you've been wanting to explore more of the yoga practices in your classroom, head over to Kids Yoga Stories. She's got some really great free resources to help you get started and to build your confidence with bringing this ancient wisdom into your classroom. Until next time, there are rainbows ahead, my friend, and together we're unstoppable.